breaking for you this morning, the search and rescue efforts in Central Texas now a much bigger mission than we knew just 24 hours ago. Officials there have announced the number of missing from the catastrophic floods has skyrocketed to more than 170 people now. The number of dead has also climbed to at least 111. Also, we have new details now about Camp Mystic, the all-girls Christian camp where at least 27 campers and counselors are among the dead. CNN obtaining records showing a state inspector certified that the camp did have an emergency plan in place just a couple of days before the floods. And this morning, the scrutiny is growing. Were officials prepared enough? And why were evacuations not ordered ahead of this massive flood? CNN has learned that Texas officials twice rejected funding applications from Kerr County, the hardest hit, for a flood warning system dating back nearly a decade. And so Kerr County never got the sirens that could have alerted residents when the floods came overnight. Our team is in the flood zone. CNN's Pamela Brown is in Kerrville Forest and Isabel Rosales is in Center Point, two of the devastated Texas communities. Let's start with you, Pam. You have some new reporting about the preparedness at Camp Mystic. What can you tell us this morning, as all of these families are mourning what happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. The mourning continues. The emotion's still very raw here on the ground. I can tell you, Sarah, that according to records seen and obtained, a state inspector visited Camp Mystic 2 days before the deadly flooding and found that it was in compliance for Texas regulations on youth camps, that there was an emergency plan in place at Camp Mystic in the event of a disaster or a serious accident or a fatality. Now, we should note that Texas regulations for youth camps don't say anything about flood zones, and we don't know if this emergency plan took that into account or whether it also took communication breakdowns into account, because we are learning more about some of the communication gaps there at Camp Mystic. I spoke to a counselor who said for the most part, counselors didn't have walkie-talkies, only leadership at the camp, and the owners did have that. And we know that the counselors didn't have cell phones with them, and that the loudspeaker at the camp wasn't functioning because of our power outages. I also told by the counselor I spoke to that she personally did not receive sort of emergency evacuation training, and we're hearing more and more stories about the heroism of these counselors who really jumped into action during that deadly flooding. There were two counselors who are speaking out about what they did for their campers, saying that they wrote the campers' names on their skin when they learned what was happening and quickly moved them to higher ground. So many stories like that where these counselors saved so many lives. It's really inspiring. But at the same time, Sarah, we know that not everyone made it out of live there at Camp Mystic. We're learning more about one of the campers who didn't. Greta Toronzo was a camper who had been at Camp Mystic for 3 years. Her mother released a statement saying Greta was kind, creative, and full of love, and also brave, athletic, and determined. We miss her bright spirit, her sweet smile, and her endlessly loving heart. Sarah.
Oh, what a sweet, sweet picture of her. And I know you have been going through it as a former camper there at Camp Mystic. You've been bringing us such gripping stories about how people are handling this. Thank you so much, Pamela. All right, now over to you, Isabel. We've seen this number now skyrocket, the number of people officials say is missing. And I'm curious what that means to those who have been on the ground there for days trying to find either bodies or those who may possibly still be alive.
Sarah, good morning. That was a big moment yesterday. I was with volunteers when I was listening in on the press conference from the governor, Greg Abbott, and I heard that figure and I related it back to them because they weren't listening in and they were all quiet, stunned. It was clearly a very shocking moment, but then they told me, yeah, okay, this is a focus. We've got a number now. We know now how many people we need to find. So clearly, this is something that has given them even more drive than they've had this entire time because it is a goal now. a goal. I want to introduce you to Michael Tober, who is the founder of Mission Mules. This is a Christian nonprofit. And if that name is familiar, it is because this same organization was there on the ground in Asheville, North Carolina, helping out with medical supplies, with food, everything that was needed in the search happening in the mountains there. Can you talk me through, Michael, what it is that you guys are doing this morning? I'll follow you.
Okay, this morning we're waiting. We got a briefing coming up. So we want to get saddled up and be ready, and then these guys will get their assignments, and then they will have us start packing their saws, their fuel, everything they need to do recovery work. So that's what we're doing right now. My guys are starting to saddle. I'll go ahead and saddle up.
And I'm wondering, as you're saddling up your mule right here, you have 6 of them. Can you walk me through, you guys got into town yesterday, can you walk me through what struck you about the situation here in Central Texas in comparison to what happened in Asheville?
I'll have to say here, if you look across this river here, you see how high the high water mark is. Some of that stuff's 30 and 35 foot off the ground. And that was the first thing that I noticed, was how much volume had come through here.
Yeah, and this is different than the situation in North Carolina, because you were trying to access communities that were essentially cut off.
Right.
The roads there were blocked to the mountains. What are the challenges that you're experiencing out here? How is this different? And how are these mules helping out?
So, yeah, like you said, in North Carolina, we were getting people that were actually cut off. Here, you can drive most of where you got to go, but that once you get to that point where the water was running the hardest, you hit, like down up the street here, there's some 3-4 foot slides. You got to come off the rocks, and not really any harder. It's just a different type of work. It's just all rock this time. But that's pretty much what they use this for. The least amount we can make these guys travel with loads, because we continually do this, the better. So if we can drive down there and we can take them in empty and then load up where the trucks stop and then go in, that's what we do here.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. I know that you're packing supplies and going behind teams of cadaver dogs. So as they go in and make sure that there's no one left behind, they're going in there with all of those supplies. We thank you for your time, guys.
Yeah. Mules, horses, cadaver dogs, and dozens of rescuers going out every single day. It is heartening to see. Isabel Rosales, thank you to you and to our Pam Brown as well, who was in the flood zone. John.
All right, senior Texas officials have now acknowledged that if Kerr County had flood warning sirens, that lives might have been saved. With us, Nicole Wilson from San Antonio. She started an online petition calling for Kerr County to install these sirens. Nice to see you this morning, Nicole. Talk to me about why. What was the instigation to get you started on this?
Ultimately, I grew up in Kentucky, where tornadoes are extremely prevalent there. We lived and died by the tornado sirens, and this was in the 80s and 90s when there were no text alerts. But those sirens were across the county, and you would hear them at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they would wake you up. And we had 2 different sounds for watches and warnings, and so you knew where to go based on which siren was going off. We trained from the time we were children until we were adults, and on the protocols for tornadoes, where if you're driving a car, where to go. So when I found out that there were not sirens in this area and in a lot of areas in the state of Texas, I don't think we have them in San Antonio, and we had a tornado a few years ago. And that blew my mind, because tornadoes sirens are simply an easy warning system that everybody will hear it within range. And you do have to put them within range. So there are multiple sirens that, you have to kind of plan that out from a proximity perspective, but you cannot rely on text. So for example, my daughters were just at a faith-based camp. These children are not allowed to bring any technology whatsoever. It'll get confiscated, because they're there to be present. They're there to grow in their faith. And the counselors are also not allowed to have cell phones in the cabins. And so you cannot rely on the text alerts. Additionally, in this area, in San Antonio at least, we've started getting text alerts for amber alerts, silver alerts, blue alerts at 3 a.m. And so many people have kind of grown numb to these alerts that are going off, and they'll hear the alert, they'll roll over, they'll go back to bed. Cell phones service is incredibly spotty. It's so bad that where we live in the San Antonio area next to a major resort, there are places in my house I can't go and have cell phone service. I have two internet providers to compensate for that. And still don't always have service. And so I assume it's very similar in that rural area, that there is not always the right cell service. But the bottom line is this happened in the middle of the night. People were asleep. People absolutely did not hear the phone go off. Some people sleep with their phones off. And so you cannot rely on one. And I think I just heard this in another speaker, but layered security for TSA enabled them, Secretary Noem, to work with TSA for people not to have to take their shoes off going through the x-ray systems, right? And it was a layered security effect, right? And so the same thing goes for risk mitigation. You have to have layers, and you cannot rely on one single mitigation.